Welcome to another edition of Radio Influencers, a podcast series we're doing for Radio Update. I'm your host, Andy Meadows. On today's episode, we're going to talk about whether on-air talent should shorten or kill their show intro. But first, let's look at the results from our recent Radio Update polls. In last week's Weekly Wire poll, we asked a question that played off of last week's episode of this podcast, The AI Economy, to gauge whether or not the radio decision makers in our newsletter agree with me about embracing AI tools. We asked, should all radio employees use AI tools? Sadly, 69% said no, and just 31% said yes. If you watched last week's episode, then you know I think that's a big mistake because it's impossible to compete with people using AI tools if you're not, and radio needs every advantage we can get as we transition to the digital age. We're recording this on Saturday, a few minutes after the Weekend Wire poll went out, where we asked a question inspired by John Lund's Don't Just Read the News, Own It article on Radio Update. What's the main cause of poorly delivered radio news breaks on music stations? A, too long, B, too irrelevant, or C, too stiff? Not much feedback yet, but too stiff is ahead so far. If that changes, I'll update you next week. If you've not subscribed to our Radio Update weekly newsletters, you can do so by going to radioupdate.com and clicking the envelope on the right-hand side. I have a consulting newsletter that comes out weekly as well. You can sign up for it by going to radiostationconsultant.com. Both are free. As always, this podcast is recorded using Riverside. I'll put my affiliate link in the show notes, or you can get to it by going to radiostationconsultant.com. If you use my affiliate link to sign up for a paid account on Riverside, I'll give you a free 30-minute remote session to give you some tips and tricks on how to use it. Now let's get into today's episode. If you have any questions or thoughts after watching or listening, email them to me at andy@radiostationconsultant.com or editor@radioupdate.com, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. This week, two things reminded me of an article I wrote back in May of 2023 entitled Killed the Show Intro, where I laid out the argument for why I thought radio shows should drop their show intros entirely. The first was An Unlikely Place, and it's one of the comedy podcasts I listen to every week to take my mind off of the depressing news of the day and work. Your Mom's House with Tom Segura and his wife, Christina Pazitsky. Only this ep featured comedian Rick Glassman filling in for Christina P., and in it they had an exchange at the top of the show that did make me think about work because it perfectly illustrated what I believe many radio listeners are saying in their car when shows play the same long show intro day after day. Here's a clip of that back and forth after the host Tom Segura played their intro. By the way, sorry for the non-family friendly quip from Rick Glassman that sounds really weird out of context here at the top.
We could have both got our balls sucked during that.
That's every time, too.
Why so long?
15 years, 16 years.
And that's how long the song is?
For 16 years.
Oh, I thought you were saying the song is approximately 16
There's
years.
a version that is, but...
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's always that long. For thousands of episodes.
Keep in mind, they just have a 53-second intro with podcast episodes that regularly last 1 hour and 20-plus minutes. And like lots of radio shows, they use it because they've been doing it for 15 years. In their defense, though, they put 5 to 10 minutes of comedy before going into it every episode. The other thing that made me think about the Kill the Intro article was John Lund's Win or Die by 8 seconds, the mic open rule that saves ratings, where John wrote about something I vehemently agree with, the importance for radio on-air talent to get to their content as quickly as possible after cracking the mic. John says 8 seconds or less. I typically say 7, but the point is the clock is ticking the second radio talent start talking, especially if it's a new listener, which I talked about in my Kill the Intro article. Our regular listeners, P1s, may suffer through our long daily intros, but they are definitely zoning out even if they're not physically tuning out. But brand new listeners who have stumbled on our station via the seek or scan button that we're trying to convert aren't going to be won over by a long pre-recorded intro. Hence why network TV stopped doing long intros that lasted a couple minutes several years ago, because they know how important it is to pique the interest of the viewers who are watching the last show if they want to keep them tuning in for the next show. Successful radio shows value the listener's time and do everything they can not to waste it. So the last thing you want to do is set the wrong tone out of the gate with the intro at the top of the show. However, I got quite a bit of pushback from that article because it turns out a ton of radio talent are married to their show intros. I've coached several shows that felt that way as well, mainly because they put a lot of work and thought into their show intros, and they kind of like the process of putting them together. Sometimes they'll even say, well, actually, our intro is content because we include recent drops and we do change it daily. But if that's the case, then you are wasting lots of time preparing something of minimal value to the show. Long, often self-serving show intros are nobody's favorite part of the show. Yes, a diehard listener might recite something from the show intro when they see you out and about, but that's because it's seared into their memory thanks to the daily repetition, not a sign that they love it. But many on-air talent feel their intro sets the vibe for the show, and there is certainly some validity to that argument. So maybe I went too far saying that talent should kill the intro altogether, and the happy compromise is shortening the intro significantly to a quick imaging piece that sets the right vibe, intros the show, and rolls a music bed under the talent that gets them talking within that 7 to 10 second window, and committing to start the show with content instead of just another long verbal intro. But what do you think? Should radio talent kill their show intros or shorten them? Comment wherever you see this, or email me at andy@radiostationconsultant.com or editor@radioupdate.com and let me know. As always, if you have some thoughts you'd like to share on this or any other hot radio topic, submit an article about it by emailing submissions@radioupdate.com. Thanks for listening, watching, and reading. We'll be back next week with a new episode of Radio Influencers.